And a very warm welcome. You're joining us once again at Hyde Park on Other Derana 24. Especially this week, we have heard controversial statements about a presidential election, concerns about statements made regarding postponing elections. The international community too has raised the question with the Election Commission. But at the same time, Sri Lanka's foreign missions are geared to work towards engaging Sri Lanka with the rest of the world and to restabilize Sri Lanka's image. I've invited to our studios a personality who has been traveling a lot, talking about Sri Lanka internationally and also engaging in much of bilateral and multilateral fora to strike agreements on behalf of Sri Lanka. Foreign Minister, President's Council, Alice Sabry. A very warm welcome to you once again at Hyde Park.
Thank you, Indeewari. Good to be back. Yeah.
Good to see you here. You've had many engagements in the recent past too. You've been traveling back and forth to the US, to other parts of the world, and we have also seen very important foreign missions traveling to Sri Lanka. What is the significance of this time for Sri Lanka, especially with the global powers?
Yeah, it's very important that Sri Lanka has always maintained independent foreign policy. So in doing so, we need to engage various parties, both on the West and the East. China, India, Japan is important for us. Similarly, US and EU are partners whom we send most of our exports. Middle East is where our remittance come from, and then there are so many others where tourist markets are. And as well as Sri Lanka had always maintained a policy where peace is the core. So therefore, Sri Lanka has a lot of important things to play, and of course, our geopolitical situation, and also where we are now, is a very important strategic location. So these are matters which have attracted a lot of international interest and geopolitical interest. I see as an opportunity for Sri Lanka to properly strategize that for our benefit and also to the region's benefit and common good of the world.
You mentioned Sri Lanka's strategic location. We've discussed this previously too, but given Sri Lanka's crisis situation, the vulnerable situation since 2022, do you see during your engagements that Sri Lanka is pushed into uncomfortable corners, especially by global powers, with the kind of aid and support they extend to Sri Lanka?
I think to be fair by them, none of those aids have been conditioned upon any of those things. But naturally, any power would want everybody to take sides and take sides disproportionately. But we have made it very, very clear Sri Lanka's foreign policy is based on the independence, and they'll continue to do so. So you could see that, and I would like you to quickly allow me a small passage from famous foreign policy magazine, which talk about Sri Lanka's foreign policy and the success during the last couple of years. This is what it says: South Asia has become a battleground for geopolitical rivalry, which puts pressure on the region's non-aligned government to take sides. But to this point, Sri Lanka has navigated this state of affairs successfully, demonstrating the capacity of the states in the global south to reinforce multipolarity in the current world order. So this is not I am saying, this is the foreign policy magazines write about Sri Lanka. Lovely article, you must read that. So in that they say that despite these challenges, obviously challenges are there and people are pushing to take sides, Sri Lanka has managed well. So that's a
Would you say that's skillful foreign policy management and relations from the Sri Lankan side? Because we've seen constant interferences, concerns about influences on Sri Lankan affairs.
Yes, I mean, yes and no, but basically there are instances where we have been asked to take sides, but we have managed it well. That's what it says, and you need to have, I mean, everything in foreign policy cannot be publicly disclosed, but a lot of things goes behind closed curtains. So I think under the guidance of His Excellency the President, we have managed it quite well. That's what the foreign policy magazine also says.
And you seem very content in your position as foreign minister than as Minister of Judicial Affairs.
No,
Justice.
not really. I like the Minister of Justice more because I was achieving so much which was very close to my heart.
And Minister, you made a comment recently at the World Economic Forum, speaking there that global powers pressure small nations. I'd like to ask you why and on what basis you made that comment that the global South is forced to make important national decisions without being given a liberty to make those decisions as independent countries.
No, it's natural, but what we want to say that is there are, we would like to work with everyone. You know, multipolarity is there to taking now. So it's no longer a unipolar world, no longer a bipolar world, it's a multipolar world. So that then we have various options on that. So therefore it's unfair for anyone to expect for us to work with a country or two and ditch the other country, particularly a country like Sri Lanka. So we would like to have that, and there are instances we would see. You could see that double standard all over in various ways things are happening. So therefore, you must not use the human right and so-called human rights values as a pressurizing tactic to interfere in the internal affairs of a country. Because Sri Lanka is the oldest democracy in Asia. We have had timely elections. No one must come and tell us when to hold election and what kind of election we hold. So generally we have a very good track record. Our opposition leaders are not behind bars. You know, so this is a tradition which we have cherished across the party line, across the leadership. So therefore we must also get the credit for what we have done. And in that, I think no one should come and interfere us and make a human right as a tool to interfere into our internal affairs.
Elections are around the corner, but this week, as I mentioned at the beginning, there have been comments and statements made that the president should continue, but those soon attracted criticism by many parties, and the US mission too engaged in discussions with the Election Commission. What is your view of the international community's engagements here, and also Sri Lanka's the current position in holding elections, given the crisis, given the financial situation?
I think elections should be held as it mandated in the constitution. So I think presidential election cannot be postponed, should not be postponed. Yes, we have done a good job for 2 years. Continuity would be good, but who to decide? The public must decide. So we should be able to go before the public and convince. If they are not convinced, it's up to the public to decide whom they want. That's what the democracy is all about. So therefore, I don't associate with that at all. I think it's a contemptuous statement. Elections should be held as it is on the time, particularly the elections which changes the governance. You know, so it's important that we hold the presidential election on time.
India is very important to Sri Lanka, and that's recognized by you and the foreign missions abroad. But time and again, we've had certain ups and downs. But do you feel that, and also considering the concerns raised, that there is too much of Indian influence in Sri Lanka, especially with the digital ID project and much sensitive information of Sri Lanka that would be potentially shared with India? Do you think these concerns have any basis?
I think basically, whether we like it or not, India is our largest neighbor, and it is the continents or regions which develop together, as I've always told, with the European Union or with the Northern America, or if you look at the mainland China, or ASEAN countries or Gulf countries. So this is India's turn. So I think when India make great strides on its economy, it's good for the region, good for Sri Lanka. But having said so, Sri Lankans should be skillful enough to understand what is our priorities, what are the pros and cons in any engagement, and should not compromise our national interest. So therefore, it's engaging with India is a must. It has to take place. It is good for the country. It is bilaterally also helpful. But in the meantime, we should improve our skills to skillfully negotiate and get what is good for Sri Lanka.
You've expressed Sri Lanka's intention in joining BRICS, the intergovernmental organization, RCEP. What's the status of these engagements and any other trade pacts that Sri Lanka intends to enter this year?
Yeah, RCEP we have already applied, so we are waiting. It's a long process, takes time, but good to start it. So process will take time. It's out of our control. It is for the RCEP members to decide on that. BRICS, we have not applied yet, but I have submitted a cabinet paper for the cabinet to appoint expert committee to study the pros and cons and suggest to the cabinet whether we should apply or not. So we are awaiting that report. Once that comes, we probably get the cabinet nod and then go and apply. Personally speaking for myself, I would like that, because that's where the future is. It's good to have multiple choices rather than just drag into one area of it. So BRICS is in the right direction because the global south countries are there. That's a good option for us.
In what sense would you say opportunity for Sri Lanka? What really are the benefits here for Sri Lanka?
So it's basically BRICS are talking about dealing in their own currencies. So that will cut off commissions at different level. From back and forth, you kind of convert your currency, means there's a cost. That additional cost become, you are less competitive in the international market. And then once you work as a trade bloc, like the G20 and G7 and all those things, they have their own way of taxations and things like that. That gives you a larger market. There are benefits in that. So therefore, it's a good thing for us to have a look at it. And then it's always better not to put all your eggs into one basket. It's dangerous, because if that relationship has a problem, then you have nowhere else to go. So therefore, it's better to have multiple choices for a country like Sri Lanka. We have learned in hard way in the past also. We have good relationship, but then those relationship breaks and there had been consequences. So therefore, I think we must have more choices. BRICS is one of the great choices which countries in the global south has.
Japan, we have heard about resumption of stalled projects or projects that were halted because of the crisis and certain decisions taken by Sri Lanka. Are there any consequences of these to date, even yet, although we are discussing to restart them?
I think so. Japanese, traditionally the way is, they say, it's very, very difficult to build a relationship with them, but then once you build a relationship with them, it is long lasting. But if you hurt them, it will take little time to build them again. So that happened to Sri Lanka. They were very, very upset about abruptly calling off the LRT project. And they were also upset about several other issues which had taken place without our knowledge over a period of time. We are working a lot of repair work on that, but things are much better than what we used to be. Actually, they went to the parliament and additionally approved humanitarian aid for Sri Lanka, about 100 million in late 2022. They have come out with and supported us our humanitarian aid. They have taken a leadership role in debt restructuring. And Foreign Finance Minister was in Sri Lanka in January this year, and Foreign Minister was here in April this year. I will be traveling there probably next month or so. So what the agreement is now, the moment we get the official creditor committee approval, they will resume all the stalled projects which they have commenced and stopped after the debt restructure.
And how about China? China's development projects came under question, and even in recent times in terms of our debt restructuring. There have been calls by the Western world and certain other countries in the Asian region also to maintain transparency and to treat all creditors equally. Is Sri Lanka looking at this favorably, and is there much emphasis on the requests?
Yeah, of course, we have told that from the beginning. President himself, in his capacity as the finance minister, wrote to all the creditors saying that all debt treatment will be universal. That means there will not be preferential creditors. Of course, there are different broader category of creditors. The bilateral creditors, which are the countries. Then, of course, the private creditors like the bondholders, and also multilateral creditors like IMF and the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. So, within one of these categories, all will be treated equally. In other words, all the countries in the world who are our creditors will be treated equally. No one will get any preferential treatment.
What is Sri Lanka's engagement with the United States, especially in terms of calls for reconciliation and achieving peace in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, Sri Lanka and of course United States have been one of a great bilateral partner for a long period of time. We have shared values of democracy and freedom of expression. Of course, that has its own implication both here and their country also. No one is perfect. You can see that what's happening in those countries. But having said so, we are grateful for great support the United States extended to Sri Lanka to eradicate terrorism in terms of proscribing LTT there, blocking the arms supply, blocking the terrorist financing and all those things. And also, we are also grateful since 2022, they have played a great role in finalizing the IMF debt relief for Sri Lanka. So having said so, we have, any relationship has its ups and downs, any relationship has challenges, but we do work with them. And the position of the government of the United States and the position of individual politicians there, maybe senators, maybe congressmen, are two different things.
I'd like to go to the Middle East, the crisis there, and the deepening humanitarian situation that's worsening. But countries like Sri Lanka, can we keep our eyes open to such atrocities being committed, regardless of what global powers are engaged or how they turn a blind eye to the atrocities there?
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. You could see that. Sri Lanka also prosecuted a war against one of the worst terrorist organizations in the world, who perpetuated child soldiering, who perpetuated the suicide bombing. But the way we persecuted that war, looking after our own people, continuously sending them supplies, knowingly 50% or 70% of that goes to LTT. We fed our enemy and fought, because we were fighting an enemy, but not against our people. We look after our people. That's why at the end of the war, people ran towards the armed forces. They will not come towards the armed forces if they were the oppressed, right? The oppressor. So therefore, it's a totally different ball game. But what is happening? So those who want us to be punished 15 years after that are turning a blind eye towards, which is right now taking place in Israel. You can see that in Gaza. So Gaza's situation, what is Gaza, is heartbreaking. The Western world is being exposed. Their double standard are there to see. There is one standard when the ICJ orders something against, or ICC orders against President Putin, but when they order against Netanyahu, a total different interpretation is given. They are being threatened with sanctions, and these are unheard. In the meantime, they are talking about peace. So therefore, I think it is time that there should be serious amendment to the international order as to how United Nations functions, as to how General Assembly functions, as to how the Security Council functions. So one or two nations cannot suppress the entire will of the world. 143 countries in the world have voted to recognize Palestine. But one country go into the Security Council and use its so-called power or veto power and scuttle the whole thing. That's not democracy. So therefore, I think world cannot watch this. We have continuously told that Israelis have a right to exist. They should. But their right to existence is threatened by no right for the Palestinian to exist. I think the best way, both the Israelis and the Palestinians must live side by side on the basis of 1967 borders. It's important that we can't do this lip service forever. It must be established. That's why President told Palestinian state must be established on the ground within a 5-year period of time when he addressed the non-aligned summit. Then it has to happen. You know, you cannot continue with this double standard and hypocrisy. One set of values to the global South countries and one set of values for Western countries and their allies. That's not fair, and that is why countries in the global South are pushing back. I'm grateful that some of the countries in the European Union have come out and said and unilaterally recognized the Palestinian state. So I think all in all, a good question what you are asking, what is happening in Gaza is a catastrophe. It is something which no one in our lifetime should not see, but it's happening. There cannot be double standard and all those things. That is why Sri Lanka had continuously said that there has to be a ceasefire now, there has to be talk now, and that must ensure the security of both Israelis and the Palestinians. An independent Palestinian state must be established, and all those who have been held by the Hamas Israeli citizens should be immediately released from hostage position.
Sri Lanka was one of the very first countries to recognize a Palestinian statehood, and just days back Spain, Ireland, Norway expressed and they recognized the Palestinian state. But again, Sri Lanka is held accountable. You've represented Sri Lanka at the UN General Assembly, and Sri Lanka is brought towards before the UNHRC as well on questions of accountability and crimes against humanity as described by the Western world. How does Sri Lanka look to engage in these and also seek lasting reconciliation for the people? Of course, we see that work is being done in the north, but when it comes to reconciliation, amid these crises in the war in Russia and Ukraine and the crisis in Middle East, how will a country like Sri Lanka look to engage with the Western world, especially when crimes are committed elsewhere?
That's precisely that we have been saying that for them to walk the talk, they to practice what they have been preaching. And as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, irrespective of what we say or not, we will continue to work towards uplifting of our people's human rights. That's how we see it. We don't see it as a Tamil, Sinhalese Muslims, we see it as Sri Lankans. And our human right has to be enhanced, and there has to be accountability if any shortcomings have been committed in the past. And that is why our institutions such as Office of Missing Persons, Office of Reparation, are working around the clock to find solution to this. I understand that 6,700 people out of 7,500 people who have complained of their loved ones being missing during the decade of 2000 to 2009 have already gone before the Office of Missing Persons. We are working on that. In the meantime, we will roll out a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So those who are affected by the war, irrespective of their race, religion, or the place of birth, could go before and ask for redress. So what we are trying to do is, and we should do, is to create that conducive environment within Sri Lanka so that nobody can go out and complain. And in the meantime, we will also ask the Western countries and the countries where sizable Sri Lankan diaspora, particularly of the Tamil origin, resides, don't come out with a narrative, one-sided narratives on the basis of vote bank politics. That's not fair. That's not helping Sri Lanka. We are trying to reconcile. You come out with one-sided stories here. It affects our reconciliation. In the meantime, I think 3 areas we have to improve in the north and east also. That means we have to have meaningful power devolution. We have to have an accountability mechanism like TRC or so. We also have to find a way to improve the living standard of our fellow Sri Lankans in north and east, because who have suffered for 30 years of war in terms of new schools, roadways, jobs, equipment, universities, and all those things. We have that 3-pronged strategy: improving the living standard, creating job opportunities, come out with accountability stand, and finally with a meaningful devolution of power package.
Very quickly, Minister, I know you're pressed for time, but a few questions again on the Sri Lanka's military being denied visa or entry to the United States pertaining to accountability issues. And recently, the 18th of May was declared by the Canadian government and as a week of genocide, and claims that as a Genocide Remembrance Day, and there are continuous claims of genocide. What will Sri Lankan government do to engage or show proof of what really happened here on the ground?
We are continuously engaging with the Canadian government. Canadian government Foreign Ministry is called Global Affairs. Global Affairs has very clearly stated in writing to a response to a RTI saying that no genocide had committed in Sri Lanka, and what happened in Sri Lanka does not qualify for genocide. That's their official position. But despite that, politicians on their own, as the Indian External Affairs Minister put in, based on vote bank politics, just to please the readily available Tamil votes there, unfortunately, come out with outrageous positions of genocide which took place in Sri Lanka, which we have protested and protested to the core. Even recently, you would have seen that the press release which we have released on Prime Minister Trudeau's statement, we don't agree with it, we don't condone that, we say that this is unhelpful, because we are trying to reconcile in Sri Lanka. It's easy for the people who are not sitting here outside to come and say how to run our country, but we must have peace in this country. That is not possible by only pleasing one segment of the society. We must get something going which is acceptable to the Sinhalese, Tamils and the Muslims and all. So when they come out with outrageous statement or one-sided statement, for example, every year he comes out and congratulate for Sinhala New Year only Tamil community in that country. He deliberately leaves out the Sinhalese community. So it's unhelpful for us. That's what we have said. Rather than becoming an obstacle for peace in Sri Lanka, meaningfully engage with us. We would like, even now there is a bilateral consultations is going on in Sri Lanka. There, one of the deputy ministers is here and our foreign secretary is talking to them. What we are asking them is to engage with us and listen to both sides. Don't go by few politicians who are acting totally on selfish agendas to get some votes.
I have two last questions, one on the Ukraine and Russia war. Especially we see Sri Lankan ex-military servicemen, war heroes, being enlisted in the war there, and families are looking for them. But how did this happen? Is Sri Lanka conducting an investigation into how that recruitment happened in Sri Lanka and the intervention from the foreign ministry at this juncture?
Yeah, it's a very sad situation. We also, I mean, until it has all happened in the sly, not officially applied for it, not officially applied for employment visa, not officially registered with SLBFE, until we went there and until some reports came in, no one knew, because there is no way that we could know. What they have done is actually had applied for tourist visa. Having applied for tourist visa, gone there to a different country and gone through there and agreed on that. So therefore, yesterday I had a review of what we have done. More than 50 TPM, that is third party note, that's how we communicate with the foreign ministry there. Our embassy in Russia, in Moscow, have communicated with them individually, giving details and all those things, try to repatriate the remains of those who have lost their lives and also try to get the people who have been injured on that. I have personally met the Russian ambassador twice, and yesterday in the meeting I asked him how we can resolve issues. In the meantime, we are trying to talk to each other, and Russian ambassador promised me yesterday that in going forward in future, he will not give tourist visa for the so-called Sri Lankans who go there and agree to take part in this conflict if they are ex-servicemen, unless the Defence Ministry give them the clearance. So Defence Ministry will not give clearance for taking part in combat unless there is prudent evidence to say that they are real, actual, genuine tourists. So therefore, we are looking at all those things. We are sending a career diplomat, senior career diplomat, Mr. Amza, former Sri Lanka's ambassador who was in Saudi Arabia, just returned to go there because we need a senior hand to tackle this situation. Russians also have shown us interest, better to have a career diplomat in there. In different ways, and also on the we are also looking at and looking forward for the upcoming visit of our state minister and the defence secretary. He will be accompanied by two members of the parliament who are supposed to leave Sri Lanka to be there in Russia from 5th to the 7th. So all these things, we are putting all these things together, but what I can ask from our people, you should know when you go to combat, your life's in risk. Therefore, don't go that way unless it comes from official channels and after registering with SLBFE for things other than fighting the war. You know, so but this is a scam, and we have.
Could this be a racket by a strong hand?
Yes, this is so. This is so. That is why we have investigations are revealed. So we have taken about 5-6 people for custody. Investigation are ongoing, but in the meantime, public must be very, very careful, not only here, whether it's Myanmar or whether it's Oman or whether it's Dubai. So if somebody is promising you employment, you should have an employment contract. you should have employment visa, you should register with SLBFE. If you go on your own on a visit visa and convert that, you have no security at all. No security on the part of SLBFE, no security on the part of the employer. So therefore, we are in a very difficult situation. So therefore, blaming foreign ministry is meaningless, because very little we can do, particularly when you go there without proper documentation.
And finally, your subject area, bills are being introduced to be presented in Parliament for democracy, to ensure economic stability, and to document the IMF agreements in Sri Lanka. How will this translate or transform into policy stability going forward? Is there hope for Sri Lanka?
If we get our act done properly, I think there are a lot of hope. I mean, I could see yesterday I met a delegation from Pakistan, Gujranwala Chamber of Commerce. Today I met our the honorary consuls in Turkey with a delegation. I also met the Norwegian, Sri Lankan consul in Norway. So all of them are saying there are a lot of disproportionate interest in Sri Lanka. People are looking at it, Sri Lanka, as a resilient nation, having come out of the humanitarian crisis or kind of economic crisis that we saw in 2022. But it all depends on how far we are going to go along with this economic reform, which are necessary, which are not necessarily popular, but which are very necessary ones. So I hope if we continue with this, there is a possibility that we can really achieve Sri Lanka's real potential, which we have missed time and again. That is because there are no policy consistency. Someone introduces something, other party comes and changes it. When the government changes, leader changes, minister changes, which cannot be. The idea of creating this law is that they are to ensure policy stability across the party line to a great extent. Just like what Indians have done since 1991, ever since they went to the IMF last time, they are never gone again. That is because despite the policy changes of those government in power, for example, Congress, there were times some coalition of leftist parties were there. There were times, and now the BJP is there. You all know their policies are totally different to each other. But economic opening, they have continued that. That is what I think Sri Lanka need to do also. That is what Sri Lanka need to ensure also. So continuity will really give an opportunity for Sri Lanka to reclaim its past glory and become one of the richest nations in the region.
I'm told we have 1 minute, so what will be the future of your political career? Party politics and you as a politician, you're seen as a statesman representing Sri Lanka today. A presidential election is around the corner. Who would you stand by? These are questions I think our viewers would like to have your answers for.
I think it's not very important what I am going to be. It's important what the country is going to get in the future. Continuation of these reforms are important. I only see a president have come out with its policies. Others have not come out with any clear policy. They are only coming and blaming and giving, finding fault with it. This is the easiest thing to do. I want this current policies to continue. So whether I'm in politics or not, the next election, I would support President Wickremesinghe to continue.
Thank you very much, Minister Sabry, for joining us here at Hyde Park, for taking the time amidst your busy schedule.
Thank you.
We had with us Foreign Minister Ali Sabry joining us, formerly Finance Minister back in 2022 and Justice Minister too prior to that, and State Minister of Prison Management and Prison Rehabilitation. We were discussing Sri Lanka's foreign engagements and Sri Lanka's position with the international community. We'll see you again next week at the same time with yet another discussion at Hyde Park. Good night.